Good afternoon. Welcome to this Revelation Bible study. This is a study of prophecy in the end times and the book of Revelation. Thank you for joining me today. We are walking our way through the book of Revelation. We finished chapter 12 last week, where we looked at this interlude that happens between the seventh trumpet sounding. This is kind of a flashback, in my opinion, the way that it is being laid out. So 12 and 13 and part of 14 is really the flashback of the things that are happening during that final 3.5 year mark of the Great Tribulation time. So let's get into this, and I'll do some recap here in just a moment. So today, Revelation chapter 13, and let's just do some recap of what we have been talking about. So what we have looked at as we have laid out this timeline has been a study or a time of the final 7-year period. And what we see in those 7 years is we have the seal events that happen. The seals unleash the scroll. The scroll then is being read. The judgment is being read from the scroll, or the covenant agreement that has been broken, or what mankind deserves. And so the seals are happening during this time. Now the seals are taking place 1 through 7. They are taking place anywhere in this entire time. So it almost seems like seals 6 and 7 are happening more toward the end, but it could happen anywhere in this time. In Matthew 24, Jesus speaks of that final 3.5 year time of tribulation, and he lays out this thing that we call the tribulation, the great one, which is actually what it says in the book of Matthew, or the way that it's written originally in the Greek. So we have the seal events, and then we have these trumpet events. Now the trumpet events, again, appear like they take place near the end, but the trumpet events could also be taking place anywhere really in this entire time. This is really the final 3.5 years. So another way to think of the potential of how these are going to work is that 1 through 7 are happening here, and then you have the trumpets that are starting at that 3.5 year mark. So that's another possibility, that the trumpets happen there. And then you finally get to the end, and the end point is where you have the Lord's return, and you also have what are called the bowl judgments, the wrath. The wrath of God is poured out on the world, so the 7 bowls of wrath that are going to happen upon the world. And that at that point it will be too late. So when we get into chapter 14, and if you pick it up really chapter 14 verse 14 and beyond, 14 all the way through really through the end of chapter 14, that's where you're going to see the ultimate rapture of the church happen, where the church is called up. So as we kind of backtrack now in chapter 13, chapters 12 and 13, we see that this is a filling in the blanks of the story, and this is where Revelation 12 through about 14, really through 14 verse 13, this is occurring in this timeline starting at that 3.5 year mark. So what we saw was the last time, the question was, well, how do we get here? And that's where we saw this the imagery of, you had Israel, and you had Israel giving birth to a son. You had Satan over here wanting to kill the son, trying to kill the son, in fact, using Herod to try to give that. Then you have him ascending to be at the right hand of the throne of God. So you have the ascending of the Son back into heaven. Then you have it picking up at that moment, picking up here where Israel is being attacked, and you have Israel fleeing into the wilderness and being protected. So during this time, during this timeline here, that's where Israel is under attack and really fighting for their lives. They escape into the wilderness. God is protecting them, using the earth to protect them. The Antichrist is the one who's really fighting against them here all along this entire 3.5 year time, and not being able to get to Israel, he turns his attention toward Jews around the world and toward any followers of Christ throughout the world. So any Christians and any Jews, they are the one that's going to be targeted at that point. So today we're going to pick it up in chapter 13, and this is, again, are the events that are happening during this part of the timeline, and this is the beastly system, the 2 beasts that are rising up to form the beastly empire. Now, if you go back and look at the study that we did on the book of Daniel, this will also fill in a lot of blanks about the beastly empire. The Revelation series does not go into that because there's not a lot of depth in it. There's three timelines that are so important to know. You have the timeline out of the book of Daniel, and that is the timeline of the rise of the Antichrist and the reforming of the Antichrist empire. Then you have the timeline out of the book of Matthew, and Matthew is the timeline that really is directed toward the disciples. It's really directed toward you and I. These are the things that you and I need to be watching for. These are the events that we can see. The Daniel timeline is the Antichrist and the Beast Empire. And then you have the timeline that we're studying now out of the book of Revelation. Now, all three of these need to be studied together because they all three paint a little bit of a different picture of the same events that are happening. And Revelation, this is from a heavenly perspective. So the heavenly perspective is we're seeing God looking down and unveiling the things that are going to be happening. So let's turn to chapter 13. Let's walk our way through chapter 13, verse by verse, word by word, line by line, and understand what God is getting to during this chapter. Chapter 13, starting in verse 1, it says this: Then I saw a beast rising out of the sea that had 10 horns and 7 heads. On his horns were 10 royal crowns, and upon his heads were slanderous names. Now that verse 1 of this chapter, should be a very familiar concept if you have been with me and followed along through our study of the book of Daniel. Because what we're seeing is this is covered in the book of Daniel. So I'm not going to cover it too much right here, but let me just highlight some important points. You saw, first of all, it says, I saw a beast rising out of the sea. The book of Daniel covers what that beast is, but just to, in a nutshell, what the beast is, this is the Antichrist empire that is rising out of the sea. Now, this Antichrist empire had 10 horns and had 7 heads. Now, on his horns were 10 royal crowns, and upon his heads were slanderous names. So there's important clues in this. And so what we see, if we go back to the book of Daniel, is that we see that the Antichrist beastly empire, the beast empire of the Antichrist, is going to consist of a federation, a confederacy of 10 nations. So what it's going to be is 10 nations that are going to be coming together, that are going to be forming an alliance, that are going to be together in this empire. I looked at in the book of Daniel some speculation of who those 10 nations could possibly be. What nations those could really be literally today, the size of military that they would have if it was, and if it was the 10 nations that we're speculating, then that empire that they're going to have is a substantial size, bigger than any military, combined military force in the world right now. The only one that will be able to come against it is China and a combined Russia, possibly, unless Russia's one of those of the 10 names. So it's 10 nations. Now, upon the 10 nations, with this 10 nations, that's the 10 horns. The 10 horns represents 10 nations. The 10 royal crowns means that these are 10 nations that are sovereign nations. So these are all not democratic nations. These are going to be sovereign nations that are going to be ruled by a king or some kind of a king-type person in those nations. Now, of these 10 nations, there are 7 heads. Now, this again corresponds because what's going to happen is there will be, according to the book of Daniel, what is referred to as these 10 horns. There will be an 11th that will rise up called the little horn. Now, the little horn will be the 11th. It will be the little horn. The little horn will be somebody like Hitler. Hitler was a little horn. He was a person of insignificance. He was a person who really did not have much power until he rose up to gain power. It's not somebody coming from aristocracy. It's not somebody coming that they were expecting to take leadership, but it is the 11th horn. Now, this 11th horn, or this little horn, the 11th, is the Antichrist. That's who this person is. When they come into power, they are going to go against 3 of those nations, and they will conquer 3 of the nations so that there will only be 7 of the nations left. So you'll have 7 kings that are left because 3 have been conquered, and you will have the little horn, the 11th little horn that rises up, who will take control of this empire. So the 10 horns is the beastly empire that will rise. The 7 heads are the 7 remaining kings who are a part of this. You will have one who will be called in Daniel the little horn. This is again, the insignificant one that you wouldn't expect. This is the one who will then take control of the beastly empire. This will be the Antichrist, though the Antichrist will be the ruler of this empire. And on the heads were slanderous names. Now, my theory, based upon things that I've studied, looked at, I think just what's laid out in Scripture, is that this is most likely going to be a Muslim empire. It's going to be Muslim related. It is going to be, because those are the ones that want to wipe out Israel more than anybody else. Nobody else wants to wipe them out. A revived Roman Empire, an empire, coming out of Romania, for example, they don't have the animosity toward Israel. The Muslim nations have a bloodlust toward Israel. They want Israel destroyed. You don't have to really speculate or read too much into it. Just watch the news coming out of the Middle East, and you will see how much they hate Israel. On the names of these heads of the ones that are left, they were slanderous names. Now, why would they possibly be slanderous names? Because slanderous means to really talk against God, talking against Yahweh, talking against Yeshua, Jesus. And slanderous names are names of false gods, talking against the God of Israel, talking against the God that Christians follow, talking against Jesus. So on the names will be slanderous names, meaning they are names following a false God. So these are going to be false God kinds of names, false God kinds of worship. So this is the picture of what Revelation is talking about. So if we go back to our timeline and we think of the rise of the empire in that final 7 years, we know that the empire is going to rise during this period of time, because at the 3.5-year mark is where we are seeing them attack Israel, attack the temple, doing an abomination of desolation and bringing fierce destruction and fierce persecution against the Jews and against Christians as well during that final 3.5-year time. So let's get more into what this actual beast is. It says, "Now the beast that I saw was like a leopard, his feet like a bear's, and his mouth like a lion's." Again, this is all reference to the book of Daniel. So go back and listen to my study on the book of Daniel, and you'll get an insight into the beast that is coming out of the water, and why these are so significant and why they're important. Now, the dragon. So again, who was the dragon from our chapter last time? The dragon is Satan, who came after. Remember, the dragon came after the child. It came after Israel, came after the child that came out of Israel, wanted to kill the child, and couldn't, so turned his attention more toward Israel. So Satan, who is the dragon, gave him. Now, who's the him? Well, this is the beast. It gave him, the beast, his power and his throne and great authority. So the beastly empire is led by the Antichrist, but Satan is the one who is empowering the Antichrist, who is leading the beastly empire. Satan gave him his power. So just note that he gave him his power, he gave him his throne, and he gave him great authority. So whatever power, whatever authority, and whatever throne Satan has, he has basically transferred all of that power to the Antichrist. Now, it says that of the Antichrist, or of this empire, of the beastly empire, one of his heads was seemed to have been slain, but the fatal wound was healed. The whole earth was amazed and followed the beast. So what is he talking about here? Here he is talking about a revived empire. If you look at the statue example in the book of Daniel, you will see that in the book of Daniel, you have the statue that Nebuchadnezzar saw, that Daniel interpreted, was multiple different types of things. Those were all different kingdoms that happened. You had the Those were all Middle Eastern kingdoms, Middle Eastern powers. You had the Babylonian kingdom, you had the Medo-Persian kingdom, you had the Greek kingdom, and then many people think it's the Roman kingdom or the Roman Empire, but I don't believe that was the case. I believe it was the Ottoman Empire, because the Roman Empire was not in the Middle East. Everyone else was at the same location. The Babylonians, the Medes, the Persians, the Greeks, and the Ottomans were all at the same place. The Ottoman Empire was done away with. I believe it was 1919 that they were completely done, maybe 1921. 1921 is when Turkey was reestablished. The Ottoman Empire was in Turkey. It was the last great Muslim caliphate. It was completely done away with. But today, they want to bring back the Middle East, especially Turkey, Erdogan. They want to bring back a revived Ottoman Empire. So what you have here is you have one of the heads that seems to have been slain, the fatal wound was healed, the whole earth was amazed and followed the beast. Now, in my estimation, that is probably going to be a reference to a revived Ottoman Empire that was once dead, but now is gone. And so you have this beast that now we're kind of turning from the 10 horns and the 7 heads. Now you have a beast, was a leopard and a bear and a lion. And if you look at that, that again corresponds to the book of Daniel. So what he's talking about here is not just the literal beast at that moment. What he's talking about is the beastly empires that have been in that situation and in that location, because that's what Daniel is referencing. So you have a Ottoman Empire that has been revived. The whole earth is amazed at the following, or at this revived Ottoman Empire, and the whole world is beginning to follow the beast. And so what you're seeing is a great revival in the world of the Muslim religion. You're seeing it spread like wildfire throughout the world. They're following this beast because the beast is going to, or the Antichrist is going to bring peace. The Antichrist is going to have power, going to have authority, and everybody is going to be worshiping that beast. So it says they also worship the beast, chanting, "Who is like the beast, and who can make war against him?" So again, this is that mark, the 3.5-year mark, where this all is taking place. We have a revived empire here. We have the formation of the beastly empire. The beastly empire is going to attack Israel, and who can make war against him? This empire is so powerful, it's so large, it's so tremendous. No one can make war because it's such a massive empire. Let's keep going. Now the beast that has risen, this again, this is my speculation, that this is a revived Ottoman Empire that is coming back into existence, that is the coming Muslim caliphate that is going to be back in the works. This beast was given a mouth uttering great boasts and blasphemy. Now you remember the previous slide, slanders on the name are written, slanderous things against God, slanderous, these blasphemies against God. So they're going to speak against Yahweh. They're going to speak against Yeshua. They're going to be speaking against him with great boasts and blasphemies. Now, it was given authority, this beast was given authority to act for 42 months. Now, what is 42 months? Well, that is 3.5 years. So this beast is going to act for 3.5 years. That doesn't mean that the beastly empire is not on the scene before that, but has tremendous authority and power for the 42 months. When he opens his mouth, there will be blasphemies against God to slander his name and his tabernacle, that is, those dwelling in heaven. So this beast will be speaking blasphemies against God. This is what makes them the Antichrist. Anti meaning against, or in antithesis of, the opposite of. They will be speaking slanderous statements against God during that time, against Jesus, against Yahweh, against those dwelling in heaven. And this beast was also permitted to make war against the Karoshim. Now the word Karoshim means the saints, or against the word Kadosh is the word for holy. The Karoshim is the holy ones. So this is the Antichrist, was also permitted to make war against the saints and overcome them. and he was given authority over every tribe and people and tongue and nation. So this is going to be a worldwide phenomena, a worldwide event that is going to happen, that the world is going to recognize the power of this empire, and the empire's reach is going to stretch into all areas of the world. It will stretch into every tribe and people and tongue and nation. There will not be a bystander. There will be no Switzerland during this time. Every nation will be affected because the reach of the global empire will pass throughout the world. Now, I find it interesting here that the Antichrist has been given permission to wage war against the saints, against the disciples, against the holy ones, against followers of Christ everywhere. Every tribe, every tongue, every nation, they will have power to make war against them and to overcome them. So we are going to see that nobody is going to be neutral, that we are all going to be affected by this. I find it interesting, too, that he refers to making war against the Karoshim. This references this fact that he is there, making war and overcoming them, makes me think that the rapture could not possibly happen prior to this, because they are there in place and war is being made against them. As tough as this sounds, as frightful as it sounds, as scary as it sounds, we are going to be facing this if we are still here and we are a part of this. There will be no innocent bystanders. We will be under attack and under persecution no matter where you live, no matter what nation or people or tongue, whatever language you speak. Everybody will be affected by this. Now, the whole earth, all who dwell on the earth will worship him, and everyone whose name has not been written from the foundation of the world in the book of the life of the Lamb who was slain. So, the whole world, so you're going to have a small population of followers of Christ, Christians, and they could be Messianic Christians as well. This could also be Jews that have come to Christ. You'll have a very small percentage, maybe it's 1%. And then you have 99% who are following the Antichrist, who are bowing down and worshiping him. Now, the followers of Christ, their names have been written in the Lamb's book of life. If you've accepted Christ, your name is in the Lamb's book of life, and that's good news, and that's something that you can be thankful for. If your name is not written in the book of life, then you need to make sure it is. You do that by accepting Christ into your heart. You accept Jesus and his saving grace. You come to him in repentance, saying, I'm sorry for the sins that I have committed. I want to trust you. I want to follow you. Would you please forgive me? When you do that and accept Jesus into your life, your name gets written in the Lamb's book of life, and you start following him from that point forward. If you do make that decision, don't make it just a faint of heart, because you're going to face persecution. And there's going to be intensity to the persecution, and it's the velocity, intensity, and the speed at which it's all happening. It's going to continue to pick up quickly. Now, the majority of the world is worshiping the Antichrist, but the followers of Christ, written in the names written in the book of life, they are the only ones who are not worshiping the Antichrist, not worshiping the beastly empire that is there. Verse 9. If anyone has an ear, let him hear. If anyone is meant for captivity, to captivity he goes. If anyone is to be killed by the sword he must be killed. Here is the perseverance and faith of the Karoshim, the holy ones, the saints. So, if you are meant for captivity, you're going to be taken captive. If you are meant to be killed by the sword, you're going to be killed. You must be killed by the sword. And so there's already a story that is written. It's a matter of following that story. If you don't take this lightly, don't pass over this, because this is going to be intense and it's going to be incredible persecution. But what God is looking for is people who are willing to persevere. The word persevere is the same word for endurance. It means to be steadfast. So what he's looking for is Karoshim, holy ones, his saints, which I'm counting you and I as part of, because we've accepted Christ and our names are written in the book of life. You're going to possibly face captivity. You're possibly going to face death if you're still here during that time. And what God is going to call you to do is to endure, to be steadfast, and to persevere. Hold on to your faith. Do not waver. Make sure your faith is strong. Make sure you are determined before these events happen. Make sure you're willing. You've already made the decision. You've decided, I will follow Christ. I will not turn back no matter what comes my way. No matter if it's captivity or death, I will not turn my back on Christ. I will be willing to sacrifice the here and now for the eternal and the permanent. Heaven with him rather than hell apart from him for all eternity. Never sacrifice the immediate for the permanent. Verse 11. Then I saw another beast rising out of the earth. He had two horns like a lamb, and he spoke like a dragon. He exercises all the authority of the first beast before him, and he makes the earth and all those who dwell in it worship the first beast. So this is the one who's going to be coming alongside and pointing to the first beast, pointing toward the Antichrist. Basically, this is number 2 in order. Now he makes the whole earth worship the first beast, whose fatal wound was healed. Now, let me just give you a little insight into Muslim thinking and Muslim eschatology. Eschatology just means the study of the end times. In Muslim eschatology, they believe they have a coming, and I'm not sure if I'm spelling it right, Mahdi. They believe that the Mahdi, that's their Messiah. That Mahdi equates to our Antichrist. In Muslim thinking, they believe that there will be a second person that will come. The second person they believe will be Jesus himself, but it's not the picture that we have of Jesus. Jesus, in their thinking, is in heaven, and he is going to be coming to the world to set all of the false people straight. He will be coming to speak to the world, saying, I'm not the one. You were mistaken to follow me. And he will be pointing to the Mahdi, to the Antichrist, saying, you need to bow down and worship the Antichrist. You need to worship the Mahdi. I am not the true Messiah. You need to worship the Mahdi, who is the true Messiah. So you have this one. Now again, this is speculation. If you mirror or you marry up what Muslim end times beliefs are with what the Bible says, when he says this other beast, you can think of the other beast meaning their concept of Jesus. This will be a false Messiah that will be coming. And he will speak like a dragon, like Satan. He's of Satan. This is the false Messiah, will exercise the authority like the Mahdi, but he will make everybody worship the first beast. So this coming Jesus, who is a false Messiah, who's going to be leading people astray, will come and say, you followed the wrong Jesus. That was never right. I am here. I am the right Jesus. You need to follow the Mahdi because he is the true Messiah, and it really will be the Antichrist. So this is the things that are going to be happening. Now this is the false Messiah, performs great signs, even making fire come down from heaven in the sight of men. So picture it this way. You have a Jesus figure coming down saying, well, I am Jesus. You were following the wrong one. And he's able to do great signs, and he's able to make fire come down from heaven. Then he will say, you've been following the wrong person. You need to turn your hearts to the Mahdi. Well, people will mistakenly think this Jesus is the correct Jesus, and people will be turned from following Jesus to following the Mahdi because it just makes sense, because he's got all the signs and the wonders that are happening at this time. Now, the false Messiah, he deceives those who dwell on the earth through the signs he is permitted to perform, telling those who dwell on the earth to make an image in honor of the beast who has the sword wound yet lived. So this false Messiah is the number 2 person. The number 1 person is the Antichrist. The false Messiah will be able to perform incredible, powerful things, such as signs and wonders, making fire come down from heaven, and he will deceive all of the people of the world. And he will point to the Antichrist, even telling the world to build an image in honor of the beast, who, again, revived Ottoman Empire, or the Antichrist as that beast. So you can see how confusing it's going to get unless you really know the Word of God, how easy it's going to be for people to be deceived by somebody who says, well, I'm Jesus. You messed up when you followed the one you thought hung on the cross. This new false Messiah will perform great signs and wonders and will deceive people and point to the Antichrist as the true Messiah that you need to follow. So do you get that? You've got to really know the Word. You have to really be steadfast. You really have to persevere and say, no, I will not believe this. I will follow Jesus. I will not turn my back on him. What all of this is going on, that is false. We need to follow Jesus, the true Messiah, the real Messiah who is going to be coming again. Verse 15. Now the second beast, again, the second beast is the false Messiah. In Muslim belief, this is their belief of Jesus. The second beast was permitted to give life to the image of the first beast, so that the image of the beast could even speak and cause all who would not worship the image of the beast to be killed. Now this is where you start getting into the mark of the beast. You have the image of the beast. You have the power of a false Messiah. You have a false Messiah pointing to the beast, and you're telling everybody that they need to worship the beast. And if you don't worship the beast, you will be, so if you don't worship the beast, you will be killed. Now this is very similar to going back to the book of Daniel, the picture that you have of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. A sound was made, and at the sound of the flute and the harp and the lyre and all of the different instruments, at the sound you were supposed to bow down and worship. If you did not bow down and worship, then they would kill you. This is the same kind of thing. There will be something that needs to be worshipped, and if you will not worship the beast, you will be killed. He also causes all, the small and the great, the rich and the poor, the free and the slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or upon their forehead. Now this is where the mark of the beast comes in. The mark of the beast is not it is not the vaccine. It is not a computer chip. It's not anything that we think of today. You can't have a mark of the beast until the beast is here. We will have to see the beast, the Antichrist, the second beast, the false Messiah, the false Jesus. They will have to be on the scene. An image will have to be erected. You will have to worship this image. If you don't, you will be killed. How do we know you're really our followers? Because we will mark you on your right hand or on your forehead, and if you don't have that mark, you can't buy or sell. But you know what? The Lord is going to provide. He will help you through all of these days. The darkest of days, the Lord will be with you. He will not abandon you. Even to the point of death, he will not abandon you. So no one can buy, no one can sell unless he has the mark, either the name of the beast or the number of his name. We don't know how all of this works, but the number, here is the wisdom. Let the one who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is a number of man, and his number is 666. Other manuscripts say 616, so it's one of these two. How that gets calculated, I cannot tell you. I don't know what that means. I don't know if anybody really knows. There's a lot of speculation that those could mean letters being, that could be an image. It could be an image on your hand or your forehead, could be a tattoo of some kind. It could be an implanted microchip. I know there's been speculations running around the internet about a patent number. I think it was number 60666 that Microsoft did. That's not the mark of the beast. The mark of the beast will be very clear. It will be evident, and it will be related to the worship of the beast. You will absolutely know without a doubt when the mark of the beast is there, because you will see the beastly empire. The beastly empire will be doing its battling. The whole world will be bowing down to this. It will be a world empire, a world order. Maybe the whole idea of the Great Reset that is coming is going to have something to do with the world order. But you'll see something. You'll see some symbol, some number, some name that's going to be related somehow to those numbers. Again, whether it's a tattoo or a mark or a chip or some kind of thing that you won't be able to buy or sell without it. You cannot accidentally take the mark. You will have to purposefully take the mark. It says in the Bible that we are marked. If we are believers, we are already marked by God. We are sealed by God. We will not be sealed by the beast. We will not accidentally take the mark of the beast. We will absolutely know, and we'll have a choice to make. And the choice, I hope, will be that you will persevere. You will hold on to God. You will follow him steadfastly, trusting him, even if it means captivity or even if it means death. That is chapter 13. We're going to stop right there. We're going to pick it up in chapter 14 next time. We'll go through half of chapter 14. And then we are going to get into the harvest of the church, where Jesus finally raptures the church. It's the first time that this idea has been presented in the book of Revelation, really showing us that the rapture is going to happen at the end. It's going to happen with the Karoshim having been persecuted. We are called to persevere. We are called to trust him, never turning our backs, no matter what comes our way. Well, if you stuck around with me this entire time, thank you so much. I hope this has been helpful. I hope that you're learning something as we cover the book of Revelation, and I hope it's all starting to come together in your mind and make sense, that you understand how all of these timelines work, and that you are watching as events unfold rapidly before our very eyes. Thank you for joining me today, and I will see you back here next week for chapter 14 of the book of Revelation. Until then, have a wonderful week. God bless you, and see you very soon.